We all love Batman, we really, really do. But if the latest developments in his big screen future are anything to go by, nobody loves Batman more than Warner Brothers and DC. It's understandable, really. The Dark Knight is a proven commodity, with his silver screen showdowns challenging box office records as far back as 1989. It made sense to use him as one of the faces to front the DC extended universe. However, after lackluster offerings that failed Ben Affleck's version, they retired the character, decided to reboot him separately, and have now gone on to reinstate him with 2 additional versions. Robert Pattinson will be the one to reboot him in Matt Reeves' gritty standalone movie, while the DCEU will welcome back Batfleck for a substantial supporting role in The Flash. Both of these are alongside Michael Keaton, who reprises his role from the aforementioned 1989 classic. As it stands, we're gonna see 3 different Batmen on the big screen in the coming years. While it all sounds a little bit crazy, don't worry about these veteran actors taking away from Pattinson, or even the confusion that comes with 3 Bruce Waynes. Why? Because the Flash series could very well be the answer to solving DC's over-reliance on Batman, streamlining his involvement once and for all. I'm Scott from WhatCulture.com, and this is how the Flash will solve DC's Batman problem. First up, the crisis on Infinite Batmans. We've discussed how DC's affinity for the Caped Crusader could lead to an undeniably confusing couple of years for fans, or at least those who aren't analysing every major update within the franchises. So before we jump into how the Flash will save the day, let's have a bit of a history lesson. Though we're 8 films deep into the DCEU, Batman hasn't been seen on the big screen in 3 years. His last appearance was in the rather divisive Justice League, and following the controversy surrounding that film, Warner Brothers temporarily retired the character and focused on others, while Ben Affleck announced his departure from the role. Yes, you can also mention his appearance in Suicide Squad, but that's barely anything more than a glorified cameo. However, The Dark Knight will return to the silver screen in Matt Reeves' The Batman when Robert Pattinson puts on the cowl. This will be a completely standalone project that is in no way tied to the DCEU and might even kick off its own standalone trilogy. You with us so far? Good. Because less than a year later, 2 more Dark Knights of old will come back as Ben Affleck returns to the role everyone thought he had left alongside Michael Keaton. The latter is reprising the role of Batman for the first time in 30 years. For that matter, will both of these guys end up undermining Pattinson's performance? That's where The Flash comes in. A multiverse of epic proportions. If you're a passionate DC fan, you'll know all about the multiverse. Hell, if you watch the Arrowverse show, you know exactly what it is. The problem is that many members of a mainstream audience will not know what the hell's going on, and thus won't understand why there are so many Batmen on the big screen. However, Andy Muschietti has confirmed that The Flash will be, at least to some extent, adapting the Flashpoint storyline from the comics. By extension, it will also be dabbling in the idea of the multiverse and alternate realities created from one decision or another. Now, you might not realise this, but the breadcrumbs for that were already laid in the Arrowverse's Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover when Ezra Miller's DCEU Flash came face to face with Grant Gustin's from the CW's TV series. It was a fun, super cool little moment in which the latter essentially gave the big screen version the idea for his codename. The multiverse has been a staple of the Arrowverse for years, but it hadn't been established by the DCEU. By crossing the 2 properties over, this confirmed that there are alternate universes outside of the main DCEU continuity. Now that those 2 universes are linked, that's only the icing on the cake for where the Flash movie could end up taking us. As for how the multiverse of the Flash will solve the Batman problem, let's talk about Batman returning. We know that Michael Keaton will appear in The Flash as a veteran Batman. Whether or not he's the exact same one we saw in the '89 film and Batman Returns remains to be seen. But none of that explains how he now exists in the DCEU. The answer might be pretty simple. He doesn't, or at least he doesn't yet. The story of Flashpoint is as follows. Barry Allen decides to go back in time to save his mother, and by doing so, creates an offshoot timeline in which he never became the Flash. Multiple heroes are different, for the most part worse, and there's a huge war waging between the Amazons and the Atlanteans. As for how the movie does that remains to be seen, but if they do end up using time travel or somehow use it as a portal into the multiverse as various theories suggest, that would explain how Barry ends up crossing paths with this Batman when the 2 of them don't exist in the same universe. On a side note, if this is the 1989 Batman, The Flash could very well end up making DC's entire library of films and TV shows canon to its cinematic universe, just as the Arrowverse did on TV. If they do that on screen and explain it well, it should allow viewers to at least begin to understand why there are so many different Batmen. A farewell for Batfleck. This all brings us to Affleck's return. Under any normal circumstances, some might feel his comeback would undermine Robert Pattinson in The Batman. Since the DCEU is considered Warner Bros.' primary continuity and Batfleck is the DCEU's Batman, it's easy to see why you might draw that conclusion. However, that couldn't be further from the truth, as The Flash will more than likely serve as a swan song for this particularly grizzled Caped Crusader. Rumour has it that when the dust settles on Barry Allen's time-travelling / multiverse theatrics, Keaton's aged hero could actually be taking over from Affleck as the DCEU's primary Batman, allowing him to depart like he initially planned on doing. It's unknown whether this would write him out of existence entirely or just place him in a separate continuity, but it would bring about an end to his time as Batman. The Barry Allen and Bruce Wayne of the DCEU have had a pretty unique friendship. Bruce was, after all, the one who recruited the Flash to the Justice League and helped form him into the hero he became. It's only fitting that he bow out in the Scarlet Speedster's solo film. Back to the DCEU and that new Batman. Michael Keaton would carry on as a veteran Bruce Wayne. In spite of what you might think, the DCEU doesn't need to rely on Batman as much as it used to. In recent years, Warner Bros. Have been experimenting with different aspects of their shared universe so that they can distance themselves from the rush job that was their first few years. Wonder Woman aside. It's mostly worked, with the likes of Shazam and Aquaman enjoying tremendous success. However, that doesn't mean that they don't need Batman. The character is an intricate part of DC, and it would be ridiculous to build a shared universe without him at all. That is where Michael Keaton comes in. Being the aged Batman that he is, it's highly likely that this iteration of the character will be in the twilight years of his crime-fighting career. We'll see him in the suit, but it's theorized that he will end up playing something of a mentor role for Barry Allen, setting the stage for him to become a recurring presence across the DCEU. With that, he'd be more like the Batman beyond Bruce Wayne, the man behind the next generation of Bat-family heroes than the actual Batman of his glory days, playing a pivotal supporting role in potential projects of the future instead of being the primary draw. And of course, you might have guessed where I'm going with this, because Robert Pattinson can become the definitive movie Batman. All of this brings us full circle and right back to the man whose new reign as DC's definitive Batman was potentially threatened by everything I've just covered. And it wouldn't be fair for Pattinson to lose out on that because of the popularity of the returning stars who came before. The Flash is the key to avoiding such a scenario, allowing him to stand alone. The irony here is that we don't even need another crossover for the Batman movie to make that happen. In conclusion, with the Flash's introduction of the multiverse serving as the perfect means to write Affleck out, then introduce a Keaton that would serve as more of a mentor Bruce Wayne to the next generation of DCEU heroes, this keeps the Batman character relevant in both a significant and believable capacity without having him dominate any of those films. All of this allows Robert Pattinson's Batman to step forward, becoming Warner Bros.' sole headlining Batman for now and the future. All of that is providing, though, that he wants to do more films. And that's how The Flash could potentially solve DC's Batman problem. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Maybe you've got a solution all your own. For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com, and I'll catch you soon.